before we even jump into the Apple and Micron feud, you put out a tweet. Let me share my screen here. Micron stock to 1800. Now, what AI did you use to make this graphic, Hamid?
This ChatGPT was so the graph is all completely made up, by the way. Basically, what I wanted to show is that, in my view, Micron is worth at least $1,800. This is like post Micron earnings. After, of course, Micron's earnings happened when we were live last week, so we didn't get a chance to sort of analyze the details of their report as well as their earnings call. All of that stuff actually I ended up doing later that day. And that's when I put in this tweet where, based on everything that Micron is saying, and I'm going to go recap the earnings because it's sort of like worthwhile recapping, and we can get rid of this screen. But based on everything that Micron is saying, it is now clear to me that Micron has not fully ran its course. So what are the things that they're saying? One, they continue to say that they're supply constrained, and now they have visibility all the way to the end of 2027 that they're sold out. So they don't expect supply constraints to sort of like be relieved until at least 2028. So management is saying this. I'm not saying this. This is not sort of like some pundits making up stuff, because everybody else is a spectator, but the management itself has visibility. Then they sort of iterated that and reiterated it multiple times that they now have $100 billion worth of guaranteed customer contracts with minimum pricing on basically memory and storage products that their customers want, with guaranteed minimum and maximum pricing, so that this sort of protects them to make sure that they don't get the prices don't go down too far for them, and it also protects the customer that the prices don't go up too high for them. So they basically have a sort of a minimum and maximum price in these contracts, and $100 billion worth of these contracts that they went from $5 billion worth last quarter to $100 billion in basically 3 months, right, of guaranteed minimum contracts that are going to be delivered on in the future. And for that $100 billion, they have cash deposits that are that have to be forfeited if the customer doesn't come through. So this basically puts Micron's future revenues at a much higher probability of them happening based on what they project than they would otherwise, because they're basically going to these long-term contracts. The long-term contracts also protects them from downside pressure on pricing. So if the argument of it being cyclical is true, well, at least for these contracts, $100 billion worth of contracts, the price is already set, and there's major deposits that the customers don't want to lose that sort of guarantees these revenue, a minimum amount of revenue for Micron. So taking all of this into consideration, and the fact that they raised their guidance for next quarter to, again, an unprecedented growth rate of $50 billion, up from 41, and $30 per share of profits, it just puts Micron at an incredible price point, where if you just annualize the $50 billion and $30 of profits, you're talking about $120 worth of EPS, earnings per share, that they're going to have over the course of the next 12 months. That's assuming zero growth from here, meaning zero additional CapEx spending by the hyperscalers, zero additional sort of price increases by Micron, just keeping everything as it is for next quarter. You're talking about $120 worth of profits. You take $120 worth of future profits next 12 months and multiply it by a very conservative forward PE of 15. This is extremely low relative to everyone else in the tech industry. And you come up with this sort of $1,800 number. That's how I came up with it. And to me, it feels like, okay, that's kind of like my new number over the course of the next 3 months until we find out what is next, right? For the first time, analysts and I are starting to agree, because now we're starting to see analysts' expectations raising their price targets to $2,000. We have multiple analysts that have a $2,000 price target on Micron. We have multiple analysts that have $1,600 price targets on Micron. So for the first time, we're actually, in about the same ballpark, me and the analysts. So that actually kind of scares me a little bit, to be honest with you. So, because analysts are often looking in the rear view mirror, but sometimes we're aligned and oftentimes we're not. So
yeah, well, I think the
anyway,
analysts are have this upward trajectory because the stock has been moving up, right? So like now they're going in that direction, where when the stock was going down or correcting, then they were projecting lower prices. My question for you in regards to how you're going to manage your portfolio going forward, is this a new line in the sand where you're going to hold off selling more Micron shares until it hits this $1,800 mark? Or
no,
is this okay?
I don't think so. And the reason for that is just because it would be somewhat irresponsible for me because of how large of a portion of my portfolio Micron already is. It's over 30% as of right now, even though Micron's down 10% today. But if we were to sort of like hit, I don't know, $1,500, it'd be tough for me to not take some chips off the table just because of how big of a risk that would be on my portfolio. So at some point, I'm going to start trimming again. And that point will probably be before 1,800. But like right now, I think that, I feel very good about my holding of Micron.
So speaking of potential risks, Apple announced that they are increasing the prices across a variety of their products. Here's a little chart showing the products that are getting a price increase. Notably, the iPhones are not getting an increase, at least for now. Somehow they increased the price of the Vision Pro, which boggles my mind. No one was buying it anyway.
Right. They're not going to sell one per quarter instead of three.
No, the other interesting one to me is the MacBook Neo, which they just announced is getting a price increase. But speaking of potential issues that could arise for Micron, it's rumored that Apple is trying to work with CXMT, which is a blacklisted Chinese memory company. Is this a concern for you?
So that's a great question. And some little bit of background on this, because there's sort of like this feud where Apple CEO Tim Cook is sort of accusing Micron of price gouging their customers and raising prices so much to where they can't hold the fort anymore by maintaining the prices the same. And we kind of talked about this and what would Apple's strategy be. And they sort of can't take the hit if the increases are pretty substantial. But if they increase the prices as they have, they are going to suffer from lower demand for their products. Now, one thing that is interesting that has happened is that they increased the prices of all of their Macs, essentially, and kept iPhone prices the same for now. And we'll see what happens when they release the new iPhones. But one of the reasons that they can do this on the Mac side is because Mac demand has started to skyrocket because of people running local versions of these AI systems. So you may have heard of a lot of people buying Mac Studios and Mac Minis and even beefed up sort of MacBook Pros and so on. So these price increases might end up actually just working out in Apple's favor on the Mac side of things, just because it might keep demand the same, but then they'll have the same or better margins. Overall revenue will actually go up from the Mac division. So it might work itself out. On the iPhone side, because it's very consumer driven and nobody has to get a new iPhone, it'll be interesting to see how much of that hit they take on their own. Now, Apple requesting exclusion from this Chinese blacklisted memory maker to be able to sort of relieve the pricing on memory is not a bad thing for Micron. The reality is that there is way more demand for memory than there is supply worldwide. And these Chinese makers are making older versions of memory chips that can still be used in computers and laptops and iPads and so on. So relieving the pressure a little bit would actually be a good thing. Most of the huge demand is coming from AI and data center spend by the hyperscalers. And that demand is growing even faster every single year than there is capacity for. And even when new capacity comes online, there's a good chance the capacity will not be enough to relieve the demand, just because AI demand is growing so rapidly. Now, what is kind of interesting is that we are becoming very headline driven, where every headline is people are reading extra into it. Oh, demand must be tapering off. But when you think about the demand for AI, for me, it's very easy to look at it from my own personal use of AI, my own company use of AI, and we're nowhere close to saturating that demand, in my opinion. And as AI is able to do more and more things, it's just going to drive up that demand significantly greater. So things that haven't even come online yet are, basically autonomous driving, robots that can sort of be smart. These are future hardware-based tasks, and then there's also all kinds of software-related stuff that we haven't done just because there's not enough compute capacity to do. And we could sort of like throw a lot more compute capacity at all kinds of problems that currently we don't have the capacity to throw at. So, I think going back to sort of Micron CEO's commentary that demand is going to way outpace supply at least into 2028 and possibly much further. And if you listen to people like Elon, they're projecting even further than that. Then I think they're probably the ones that are correct, that the demand is nowhere near at max, and supply is not going to catch up anytime soon. So all of that summarizing to, yes, I think it would be a good thing for Apple to get some relief from the Chinese memory manufacturers, and not just Apple. We need more memory chips. And I don't think that will be a bad thing for Micron. I think basically what it's going to do is going to help stabilize pricing to some extent, and it's going to allow us to meet the demand that we have in general for storage and memory. So that was a long-winded answer to say, I don't see it as a bad thing, despite the fact that the market seems to see it as a bad thing, at least temporarily, for Micron.
Yeah. And one last point on this from a consumer perspective, it's unfortunate that these price increases have to occur, but I will say no one's reporting this. There is a rebate program where you can buy one share of Micron and you actually get more than the increase of the product. You just have to hold it for a couple months and you get all your money back. It's crazy.
That is not investment advice, just to be clear. That is just a joke.
Micron rebate program.
But yeah, instead of buying a MacBook, buy some Micron stock, and then buy a MacBook Pro instead later.
Yeah, it pays for itself.
Yeah, that's fun.
Okay, so
So before we move on, I mean, I don't know if you're ready to move on to a different subject, but before we move on, the whole sort of Apple and Chinese memory manufacturer thing, it does not make me any less bullish on Micron. It's something that I think has to happen in order just for us to continue to grow and allow for AI to sort of expand further, especially at the pace that it's expanding. And I think it's still good for Micron. So.
Yeah. And to your point, these models are going to be constantly evolving, where they are going to get more efficient, but they're also going to get more hungry and way smarter, right? Like they're going to be able to do more, even if they're more efficient. So
that's exactly right.
And memory is going to be critical.
Yeah, and we explored that with respect to our bunch of different technologies as it becomes more and more efficient. And there's hundreds of examples of this over the past 200 years. This is not a phenomenon that's happening just to memory, but as you make something more efficient, like for example the Google algorithm that was like 6 times more efficient memory usage, for example, that scared people away from Micron back when Micron was a $400 stock. basically what these things mean is that the demand is going to outpace even the efficiency gains that you get from those types of things. And paradoxically, that is something that has been known since the 1800s, that as you make things more efficient, the demand for them actually outpaces the efficiency gains. So something to think about for sure.
Hey, can I chime in here?
Please.
Yeah, of course. Hey, Adrian.
Okay, hi. We just had a question that I think would be great to answer now.
Go, let's do it.
Would holding Micron over the long weekend be a good idea?
Do you mean holding Micron for 3 extra days while the markets are completely closed? So I never personally view holding a stock in. I don't own anything that I don't want to own for long periods of time, and my period is usually years, or until things change. And things change because prices go up or down. Things change because management provides more sort of clarity and visibility on their financials. Things change because competitors do something. But the weekend is always going to happen. So holding through a weekend is not a concern that I would ever have. So yeah, I'm not going to make any actions because of the weekend.
Adrian, let's do the other Micron comments underneath that too.
Okay. The comments or the question?
The question and the comment.
Okay. Why do you think Micron is down 10% today?
All right, I'll let Dustin, you answer this one.
I mean, so you never really know why. I do think it's because of Meta, which we will talk about, and we can talk about it now. Meta announced that they are going to start selling their AI capacity, similar to what SpaceX did, which I have to give Hamid his flowers. He completely called that one and was spot on. But the market is reacting in this way, I believe, because they're concerned if this hyperscaler doesn't necessarily need all this capacity, then who's going to utilize it? Who's going to be the buyer? So it's the market just kind of being a little squeamish, in my opinion.
So remember that. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly correct. And remember, the market is bipolar in the short term and overreacts to every bit of news because people don't have visibility into something. They go with projections of, oh, this must mean this, or X must mean Y, and therefore they're going to make a decision as if Y is a fact. And the reality is that that's a complete guess. And sometimes these guesses sort of like catch on as if like it's a statement of fact, much like, for example, the Google algorithm for 6 times more efficiency basically meant to a lot of people that, oh, this must mean there's going to be 1/6 the memory demand that there would have been otherwise by AI users. And as a result of that sort of speculation catching hold, the market sort of punished Micron in the short term. So these things happen. The market in the short term is very bipolar and is speculative. But in the long term, what's going to matter is the reality of the situation. If Micron continues to have its revenues and profits, then these things will automatically fix themselves, right? And then tomorrow somebody else will have another speculation as to what's going on, and then we'll see a different result. So this is just the sort of like market going up and down. I don't try to explain any of that stuff, by the way, on a day-to-day basis. I'm looking at it from a long-term perspective. Just a couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken, Google actually there was a headline that Google is turning down Meta's additional AI data center request, right? There was a headline that said that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so the fact that Meta is considering selling its excess capacity is just another potential rumor that contradicts, by the way, the rumor that Google turned down Meta requesting additional AI capacity. So does Meta need more capacity and is trying to buy some from Google and Google turned them down? Or do they have excess capacity and they're going to provide it as a data center cloud offering? These things are actually contradictory headlines. Both headlines have come out in the past couple of days. Which one do you go off of? And the reality is to go off of neither one of them is the way we should be operating. But in the event that Meta has excess capacity, that excess capacity is still going to be extremely valuable. And that was the tweet that I think, Dustin, you were referring to a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and another contradiction to note is Nebius, which is a AI cloud provider. They're a competitor to Iron, which I'm invested in. They're down 17% today because they have a very large deal with Meta to provide capacity for them. So did Meta purchase or sign this contract thinking that they were going to utilize this capacity and now no longer need it and will try to get out of the contract? Or, are we just not seeing the full picture? So I thought that move was also interesting. But like as an Iron shareholder, I mean, they were down 5% today. But to me, it seems like if these hyperscalers are getting into the AI cloud business with SpaceX included, maybe Iron is more of a acquisition target for them. I don't know how likely that is, but if they want to build out these data centers, they could just buy them instead of doing all the work. So,
right,
just an interesting angle and definitely something to keep an eye on.
We'll get a lot more clarity on all of that from Meta's earnings report. Obviously, that's going to happen in what 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. Usually it happens by the 25th of the month. So, I'm going to be a wait and see holder of Meta, and in my opinion, Meta, even in the 600s, is very much undervalued. And if they have excess capacity, data center capacity, and they get into the data center rental business, leasing the data center space to Anthropic or OpenAI or whoever else that might need it, I think that could be a very lucrative business for them, especially if the prices that SpaceX is getting on a per megawatt or per gigawatt of data center capacity is the going rate. Then Meta is in an incredibly good shape because they're going to bring online 4 gigawatts of capacity next year, 1.5 gigawatts this year. So if you just simply say that, if they were to release 4 gigawatts of capacity at similar rates to what SpaceX is doing, that is over $100 billion worth of revenue in a very, very conservative financial measure of that. So they're in a fantastic position from my perspective.
Hey.
Okay, Adrian, there was that comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna. This one's just, today was a bloodbath.
Yeah. So what I want to say about this is like
for Micron specifically.
And yes, today was a bloodbath, but it was a bloodbath to $1,000 a share, which we were just celebrating like a couple weeks ago. So you have to sometimes take a step back and look at the bigger picture and be a little bit, try to be as level-headed as possible, which I know is hard because we're dealing with real dollars here. But, it crashed to $1,000 a share.
1,030, yeah. And, this is also why I don't own a single stock, right? Like I don't own one stock, I own 6, right? Meta and Robinhood happen to have great days today. So they cushioned that Micron fall for me. So that was definitely helpful.
Okay, can I do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more and then we should get to the next topic.
Okay. Hi, guys. Micron earnings were record-blowing. Why do you think Mr. Market didn't recognize that yet? We went through a similar process last earnings, and it tripled since then. Mr. Market, don't learn.
Your guess is as good as mine, but Mr. Market has bipolar disorder and tends to react. I mean, this is not something new to anyone who has been in the market for some period of time. In the short term, the market doesn't behaves sort of erratically. In the long term, it's always about the it usually comes down to revenues and profits and growth rates and that those fundamentals.